Let's have a look at alphas in ZBrush. This is something you might have heard about before, mostly because we keep talking about it. You shouldn't really use them. Now, you can totally use them. The argument we are making is that you should be very careful when you are using them. Probably the biggest error people do when they're sculpting is that they're using alphas way too early. Essentially, what alphas are doing is that they will add a lot of very fine frequency details very quickly onto your model, which means that you can just add pores super quickly and get this really lovely layer of pores in like a few minutes. This looks awesome if it's done right, but if it's done too early, it's going to just completely destroy your model. Remember, with great powers comes great responsibilities. Alphas essentially are, it's like a brush in Photoshop. It's kind of like the brush texture you might have been using in other software. You can find alphas under the alpha palette here to the left, and we can now pick something else. We can pick, for instance, the Alpha 07. Now you can see what happens when we start sculpting with it. You can see that we just get this like textured result right away. So there are a bunch of different ones you can try out. They have some different textures, and some are fantastic for hard surface. Some are great for organics, and you can have everything in between them in the whole world. So there's some really, really powerful ones here. You can see though that we don't really have a whole lot of control with them. It just looks a bit nasty when we just drag them out like this. And this is because it's just doing the dots. It's just dragging them out with a regular interval, but we don't really want that. A lot of times we want to be far more random or far more controlled. So for that purpose, we can go under. Here we have the stroke type, and by default it's going to be set to dots or freehand, mostly depending on what brush you're using. We can use two different ones here which are really handy. We can use the spray one and we can use the drag rect one. Spray is going to basically spray it across. This is fantastic if you just quickly want to break up the surface in a real nice and easy way. So let's set the intensity a lot lower. And now you can just see that we just get this really nice broken up feeling right away. We can also set it to drag rect, which is going to drag it out like so. So really useful stuff. This is also where the focal shift comes into play. If we set this all the way to 0, now you can see what this is doing. The focal shift will essentially set the entire image to be projected onto it, which in a lot of cases is what you want. Just depends on how you made the alphas. But in this case here, clearly it's not what we want, because here you can see all the seams all the time. So in this case, we probably want to set it down to something like 0. And now you can see it fades it off instead. And you can just really nicely just build it up on each other like this. And you can just build up a level of frequency like this. So if you want the alpha to be a lot sharper in the borders, just set the focal shift to 0. We can also load in our own alphas. We do this by going to the alpha palette here and load or import, or we can like down here, or we can go to alpha and we can go import up here. So we are providing with 2 free alphas from the Flip Normal Skin Kit in this series. We were using this quite a lot when it comes to the troll chapter, or the final chapter of the entire series, the ogre chapter, where we do the alphas. So we can go here and we can just find this under troll sculpting alphas, and we're going to bring in both of them. So just select both of them and hit open. And now you can see that these are now in our library here. So we high freq 01 and pores, high freq 02 and pores 01. So what happens if you just drag them out like this? Let's increase the intensity a lot. And here you can see what happens. So what we have to do with these specific alphas is that we're going to have to go to alpha. Just drag it out first so we can see what it's doing. We're going to have to go to alpha, and we're going to have to go to modify right here. And we're going to have to set the mid value to 50. What this is doing is saying that if something is 50 in value, just 50% gray, nothing will happen. If it's below 50, it's going to go into the model. And if it's above 50, it's going to go out of the model. Really useful stuff, because it means you can design alphas which goes both in and out. So what we can do is you can drag it out, and now you can see what happens here. If you compare this to this, it's so much nicer. Obviously, the intensity is way too high, but you can see we get something really lovely when we have a good intensity and we set it to 50. For the skin kit we're using, we actually have it in the interface, just a button here which just clicks 50 and just sets it automatically to 50. So what's the advantage of this? Well, let's go back to in history here, and now we can start to sculpt a little just so we lose the history. Cool. Okay, so now we can quickly drag out some pores here. Set the intensity down a little bit, like so. And now we can just start to drag them out. And you can just see how insanely fast you can get this really lovely pore coverage like this. Like if you try to sculpt this, that's not going to work at all. And also if you try to sculpt with another alpha as well, like if you switch this to something else like this, the quality difference is just insane. Like take away from the border around it now. So we can just smooth this out, or we can set this to 0. Compare these two, there is just miles of difference between them because these are hand sculpted. We can just go back to Porcel 1. We can just see what this looks like. So you have so much control when it comes to this. So very quickly you can see that we can cover a whole area with pores like this. We can also set the drag type or the stroke type to color spray, or spray rather. And then we can just spray it out. Now you can just see how insanely quickly you can just get coverage over it. You can also hold on the Alt key, and that's going to do the opposite. It's going to just make it go out of the surface. So if I don't have any time at all, I'll use the spray. Or if I have a lot of time, I will use the drag rect, and I'll just go over it, and I'll just make sure everything is fine. We also have another one here, which is high frequent 2. And if you just go to alpha again, set the intensity here to mid value, just make sure it's set to 50. And then we can just start dragging this out as well. So you can just see this is quite different. This is more of a rough skin. So this is so much fun to do, but you really got to be careful that your model supports the shape of it. In this case, you can see we have really nice mid-frequency with all these kind of shapes here. These are really supporting it. If you don't have this, then it's really not going to work. Then it's going to look just like a tiled mess across everything. Alphas are really easy to use once it comes to it. It really is just select the alpha, get in there, and then play around with it. We can also go under alpha and we can say flip H and flip V. That's going to flip it horizontally and vertically. So if you want some more variation in the alpha, maybe it looks a bit tiled, you can go in here and you can set flip H or flip V, which again flips it horizontally or vertically. So really useful stuff. We love using alphas here, but only if your forum supports it.